Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sasha. Today we are trying another one of my judging a book display table at a bookstore. We're going to be judging, do I know any of these books? We're going to be judging how many of these books have I read. We're going to be judging books I've heard of, authors I may or may not support, and at the end we're going to tally up how many new books I've discovered that I would like to read. So if that sounds like something you would be interested in, stay tuned. We're gonna have a really fun video for you today. All right, so when I walked in to the bookstore, the speculative fiction table was actually right before you got to the dark romance section. And there were some things on here that I was like, do we really actually consider this speculative fiction? Because some of the ones I'd heard of, I was like, I don't know that this is the right term for this book, but maybe you were just like looking for something really popular to put here, and if that's the case, do you. I don't work there. I'm not in charge of what gets put where. I've also learned in the past year that depending on what publisher you're with and depending on what sort of budget you have for marketing, you can pay bookstores to put your books on a standout display so that they get in front of more people. So for example, Sarah J. Maas probably has this sort of contract where her books are in the front at Target and she has her own dedicated table, sometimes 2 or 3, in places like Barnes & Noble. That was information I wasn't aware of. So for indie authors, it can be really extra challenging for their books to get into the eyes of readers because they're hidden on the shelves amongst all the other books. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at these displays. Let's think of how these authors got here. Let's think of why they're there. And I was going to try and add another thing of tallying up how many authors were POC or disabled or marginalized, but I'll be honest with you, that is a lot of work for a chronically ill creator to do, and I decided not to, but I want you to know that I am thinking of that, and you should also be thinking of that, okay? Okay. So, when I went to the speculative fiction book display, if I counted correctly, which I maybe didn't, you'll have a full screen of all the books at some point in this video so you can count and let me know if I did a good job. I thought there were 23 books. Books I've read, 1.5, and really it's just 1 at the point of this video, and we'll get to it as we go through the list. Books I've heard of, 13. Authors I do not support. This table is the reason I have to have this column, because as I was going through the table, my soul kept getting crushed a little bit, because I was like, oh no, another one. There were 4 authors on this table who I knew of previously and who I don't support. Now, I will not be talking about these books or these authors in this video. I also won't even be talking about why I don't support them. They're just not gonna exist in this video, okay? Okay, so let's get into the first one. Here we go. So, starting off with some drama is Blood of Hercules. I've heard so much hype about this book. I got my water because I wanted to get a drink. Let me get a drink. I was like, why am I shaking it and just holding it? Because I'm trying to tell myself to drink, but I kept yapping. So, I've heard a lot of hype around this book, but unfortunately, I don't remember if we're mutuals or not, but someone I follow on Blue Sky is currently reading this book, and they made a post to say that the only black leading character is referred to as a mutt because they are part human and part immortal. And you can go to this post if you'd like, and underneath I commented something like, I get upset when people call dogs mutts. Like, what are we doing? How did this not get edited out? Where were the sensitivity readers? Like, what's going on? So even though I was very excited about this book, I'm going to be passing on it because this is not, it's such, I don't even know if I could call it a microaggression because it feels really obvious, but clearly it either slipped through the cracks or was intentionally stomping over the cracks as it got published. So anyway, it's a skip for me. Next book is Quicksilver. It's a book talk darling that's now coming to Netflix. If you haven't heard of this book, you maybe aren't into romantasy or fantasy or keeping up with the girly pops on Book Talk, which is totally fine. And I probably have to read this now. But am I actually going to? I don't know, because there's a big divide between people who love this book and people who read a little more critically and who don't love this book. So I don't know where I'm gonna fall, because one of the things I want to do for 2025 is read with intention and read with my brain on, and I feel like I won't have a good time if I read this in that way. So we'll just have to see what happens. I am a person, though, when something's coming out and I had an inkling to read it before it became an adaptation, I typically read it before I see it. So I feel like this is going to be one of those things where I'm going to be like, no, I have to read it first and then I can watch it. That might be the case here. Anyway, let's move on. The Honey Witch. This book had so much hype. So much. And then a lot of reviewers rated it pretty low, which I don't know if it was a case of it was marketed incorrectly. I don't know if it was a case of people ranting about how, not ranting, but raving about how excited they were for this book, and then actually reading it and being like, oh no. Like, I think the excitement came too early before people were reading it and then actually being like, not our favorite. So I would still give it a try to see if I'm an outlier of these groups of people who actually reads it and does enjoy it, because that happens all the time. I picked up a book because of a 1-star review one time, because the 1-star review, I was like, those are all things I like, so maybe I'll have a great time with this. So you just never know. It's all subjective, and we all have our own opinions, and that's fine. Up next is Long Live Evil by Sarah Reese Brennan. This author sounds familiar to me, and the Inkblood Sister Scribe, that title sounds familiar to me. So both of these are like vaguely familiar. So we're gonna look them up really quickly. Long Live Evil. And see if I would add them to my TBR. Oh, Lee Bardugo blurbed it. This is book number 1 in a series, a tale for everyone who's ever fallen for the villain. Well, okay, we get a check mark for that. When her whole life collapsed, Ray still had books. Also relatable. Dying, she seizes a second chance at living, a magical bargain that lets her enter the world of her favorite fantasy series. I'm gonna pump the brakes a little bit, because it sounds like we could have disability rep, and then we use magic to take it away, and to go from disabled to abled. And I have some issues with that, because that is not... Obviously this is a fantasy, but it's like erasing disabled voices a little bit. Let me keep going. She wakes up in a castle on the edge of a hellish chasm, great word, in a kingdom on the brink of war, home to dangerous monsters, scheming courtiers, and her favorite fictional character, the once and forever Emperor. He's impossibly alluring, as only fiction can be, and in this fantasy world, she discovers she's not the heroine, but the villainess in the Emperor's tale. An adult epic fantasy debut puts the reader in the villain's shoes. It's brilliant and supremely satisfying. I don't know if I can get past that first line where our character is dying and then she makes the deal to get out of it. Because that's obviously, like, some people have come to terms with their mortality if they are chronically ill or sick. Whereas other people would jump at this if it was something we could do in real life, or like if medical advancements come around, they're going to jump at the chance to enter a trial or do something, you know, like a medical trial, not like a fantasy sword trial. I'm really torn, because if we didn't have that element, if she entered into this deal for another reason, I would have been on board with this. I'm gonna skip it just because it's giving me so many big feelings and I haven't even read it yet. I don't know. It could be great. It could not erase disabled voices in the way that I think it will, and I would just have to try it to know. But I don't know, gives me a weird vibe, so I'm gonna move on. Ink Blood Sister Scribe. Let's check this one out. It was a Goodreads Choice nominee for 2023. Two estranged half-sisters tasked with guarding the family's library of magical books must work together to unravel a deadly secret at the heart of their collection, a tale of familial loyalty and betrayal, and the pursuit of magical power. Oh. Books that let a person walk through walls or manipulate the elements, books of magic that half-sisters Joanna and Esther have been raised to revere and protect. I'm interested. I love me some magical books and libraries. Ink Blood Sister Scribe. Okay. It's added to my TBR. That sounds great, actually. Alright, let's move on. Dragonfall. This is where the 1.5 came in because I currently have a copy of this from my library. It's the second time I've checked it out. The first time I put it back, not because I didn't want to read it, but because I was starting to write again, and I can't read and write at the same time. My brain just won't let me do it. So I was like, it's more important for me to work on this draft than it is for me to read right now, so I returned it. I have it checked out currently. I was hoping I would have filmed this video a little bit later in the month, but I got the chance to film today, so we're filming today. And I haven't read it yet, but I plan on reading it. It's supposed to have good trans representation, great fantasy stuff. The way I found this book, actually, I was on Twitter before I migrated to Blue Sky, which is the best place. I'm having a great time. I found this author through writer Twitter, and they would just talk about their process. They would talk about, like, their mom would send them pictures of finding their book in real life, and then it was, like, just really cute and really sweet, and the second book was either on sub or coming out when I found this author, and so they were obviously promoting the first book to be like, hey, the second book will be out soon. So that's how I found out about this book and this author, and I love anything dragons, so I'm really excited to read this, hopefully either December of 2024 or January of 2025. Keep all your fingers and toes crossed for me. Up next, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia for Fairies. This has been on my radar. It sounds like I would really, really enjoy it, and I don't know what else to say. It sounds like it's going to be a really fun book. I have another book that's similar that I haven't read either, The Natural History of Dragons. And I feel like if I read these at the same time, it would be very cute to compare these kind of like history books or like textbook-esque books that are actually just fantasy books. I think that's such a cool little niche genre, and I'm very drawn to it as someone who enjoyed school most of the time. And yeah, so I would love to check this out. I guess we can count that. Well, yeah, well, it's already on my TBR. I have to add new books to my TBR. Okay, more new to me authors. We have Throne of the Fallen, it looks like. And we also have This Will Be Fun. I feel like Carrie Maniscalco I've heard of. Let's see. Sinner, Villain, Wicked. The Prince of Envy has never claimed to be a saint, but when a cryptic note arrives signaling the beginning of a deadly game, he knows it will take more than a hint of sin to win and save his falling demon court. Oh, demon court. Riddles, hexed objects, anonymous players, nothing will stand in his way, though none of his meticulous plans prepare him for her, the frustrating artist who ignites his sin like no other. I gotta say, that sounds kind of fun. I am kind of tired of trials in books, and I say that as I'm in the middle of reading the Sunbearer Trials, and I don't mean it because of that book. I mean it because of The Serpent and the Wings of Night, where that entire book was a trial, and it's like a little soothing to my anxiety because you know your main character has to live until the last trial. So it's like I don't really have to worry too much about what's going to happen in each trial, and I know that one is coming up every few pages or whatever, but it's not really exciting. It doesn't sort of subvert anything, or I don't know. I'm sure you could make it exciting in a way that's different, but I'm kind of tired of trials. For that reason alone, I'm going to skip this one because it sounds like it's just another trial fantasy. We're going to look at This Will Be Fun by E.B. Asher. I do like this cover. Let's scroll-y down. Princess Bride meets people we meet on vacation. Cozy quest fantasy about a group of friends who once defended their magical land together but haven't spoken since. No offense, if that's your thing. That's not the type of cozy fantasy I'm interested in. I could actually like this, but I don't think that's what I'm looking for. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna skip it. Okay. Next up is When the Moon Hatched and the Hurricane Wars. Both books I've had on my TBR. Both books I am familiar with. Could I tell you about them? No. I don't know much about them in terms of, like, I obviously heard of them at one point and heard people reviewing them and talking about them, and I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like I'd like it. I'll add it to my TBR, but that's the extent of my knowledge. So they're on my radar. But my radar, it's not just my radar, it's my memory. She don't stick around as well as she used to. This is another thing I can bring up to my therapist. Anyway, we've been talking about my memory a bit in therapy because it's challenged. Next is Gideon the Ninth. I feel like this book specifically has been on my radar since it came out. Everyone talked about it. This is some people's favorite books. I don't remember there being a lot of criticism for this. If anything, I remember this being if you like Jay Kristoff, you should read this book type of thing. And I stopped being a fan of Jay Kristoff, and I have kind of been looking for a replacement, so I should maybe pick this up sooner rather than later. It was also really recently recommended to me by a good friend and recommended for our book club. So I might be reading this year if it gets enough votes from all of our book club members. We shall see. Up next, 2 more new to me authors, even though I knew the end. This sounds like the boy dies at the end or something. Maybe not, but it kind of does. It's looking a little old-timey. What era do I think this is based on the cover? That jacket's not too old. I'm gonna guess 50s. Let's see. A magical detective dives into the affairs of Chicago's divine monsters to secure a future with the love of her life. Sapphic period piece, I do like that. Will dazzle anyone looking for mystery, intrigue, romance, magic, all of the above. It doesn't say what, it just says period piece. I want to know more than that. What's the era? What's the era? It's only 136 pages? That can't be right. Is it? Oh, 1930s. I was 20 years off. Well, I was gonna say it looks a little World War II, but the way that the coat was, it was giving a little bit older, but apparently not. Okay, not enough information for me to be really sold. We're going into The Scholar and the Last Fairy Door. I love scholars, I love fairies. This sounds promising just by the title. Let's see. All they need to break the world was a door and someone to open it. Camford 1920. Okay, so both of these are period pieces. Gilded and glittering England. We're going from Chicago to England. England's secret magical academy is no place for Clover, a commoner with neither connections nor magical blood. She tells herself she has fought her way there To find a cure for her brother, one of the few survivors of a ferry attack on the battlefields of World War I, which left the doors to fairy country sealed, the study of its magic banned, and its victims cursed. I don't know. I don't love historical periods that center big wars. And I've talked about this when I do book unhauls. I'm gonna skip this one because it's too like real world, which is why it's speculative fiction. It's too much of the real world mixing with fantasy, and I need it to be like kind of more full fantasy to work. Okay, interesting though that I didn't even know that these were both like period books. I just put them together because I hadn't heard of either of these authors, so that worked out so well. If that is something you like, boom, you have 2 new recommendations. Up next is V.E. Schwab, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Can you believe I have never once in my life read a V.E. Schwab book? I don't know how I've missed them because they have been around since I have been on booktube. If you don't know, I had a booktube channel back in 2011 maybe. All those videos are private now. The channel maybe is still there, like the account is still there, but there are no videos available on it. And Victoria Schwab has been around forever. She's written young adult. She's written that magical series where it's like the maps and things, and I don't know. Anyway, I will be reading this book because it is, for the other book club I'm a part of, the pick for March, I think. So I'll be reading it soon. And I'm very excited to see if I like it. I thought I had a copy of it, actually. And I don't know. I can't remember if I had a copy. I don't think. Because this was definitely a book of the month pick. And I was like, oh, I should get that. But I think I maybe got the Holly Black book instead. And that's what I'm thinking of. So anyway, we're going to be reading it, is the point I'm trying to make here. This one I'm excited about. Sophie Jordan, Firelight. I'm pretty sure I read all of her dragon young adult stuff. Yeah. Wait, it's the same book? Wait, I have read this. They changed the cover? Wait a minute. Yeah, Hidden Truth, Mortal Enemies, Doomed Love. I've read this book. That's another one I've read. So I'm now up to 2 and then 0.5 because I have Dragonfall. Oh my god, they changed the cover. Yeah, I read this series when I was in college. I think she is such a fun writer. She made me, I already liked shifter stories, shifter romance, but she made me really like shifter romance and shifter stories. This was so much fun. I'm so excited this is getting a resurgence. I would almost want to read it again and see if it has the same, it's not going to have the same impact, but see if it stands the test of time to where I'm still just as excited about it reading it now as a 32-year-old versus when I was like 22. Would I have been? No, I would have been 18 or 19 when I read this. That's wild. I was like, Sophie Jordan's back with new dragon books. No, it's the ones I've already read. That's so cool. Okay, next. This is Rebecca something, A Pirate's Life for Tea. I'm wondering if this is the same book that is High Tea and Treason or something. The other tea book. Let's see. A Pirate's Life for Tea. Because I know there's a whole series of cozy... Oh yeah, Tomes and Tea Cozy Fantasies. Book 2. Let's see if I'm right about book 1 being what it is. Can't spell treason without tea. Well, I knew the cover. I was thinking of the cover with the blue sprayed edges, and on the inside there's a little art. Okay, and I also follow this author on social media. She talks so much about indie author stuff and Ingram Parks and publishing and... I need to pick up her books. We're writing it down. I'm gonna do the first one. Can't spell treason without T. I love her videos. She did a lot on TikTok, and I'm not sure. I think I probably follow her on Instagram now, and I don't know if she's made her way to Blue Sky. I can check after this, but yeah, she's such a cool person and a resource and shares her knowledge. She's not about gatekeeping. She's very open about how much she makes, how she does things, which companies to work with, which ones to be aware of. She's so good at helping other indie authors, and I am like so happy to see her book on a major display. That is so cool. Okay, next. This man. I have known about this man for a while because I was introduced to him through his Star Trek books. I owned one, but I never read it. And I follow him now on Blue Sky. Again, all of my references now are going to be from TikTok to Blue Sky. It's just the thing that's happening. I enjoy his takes and his personality and want to try his books. And I have no idea what this one is about. Let's look it up. Starter villain. I love that it's a cat in a tuxedo on the cover. Like, what are we doing? I don't know. Inheriting your uncle's supervillain business is more complicated than you might think, particularly when you discover who's running the place. Charlie's life is going nowhere fast. A divorced substitute teacher living with his cat in a house his siblings want to sell. All he wants is to open a pub downtown, if only the bank will approve his loan. Then his long-lost Uncle Jake dies and leaves his supervillain business complete with island volcano lair to Charlie. It's kind of giving Impossibles. Like, if someone was like a great cousin to Mr. Impossible. But he's not the villain. Anyway, becoming a supervillain isn't all giant laser death rays and lava pits. Jake had enemies, and now they're coming after Charlie. His uncle might have been a stand-up, old-fashioned kind of villain, but these are the real thing. Rich, soulless predators backed by multinational corporations and venture capital. It's giving CEO of United Healthcare. Oh no. It's up to Charlie to win the war his uncle started against a league of supervillains, but with unionized dolphins, hyper-intelligent talking spy cats. Yeah, this is going on my list. Starter. It's also giving Minions. Oh my god, that sounds so funny. Oh my god, that sounds so good. Yeah, I'm actually, like, really excited to look into that more. That sounds hysterical. Okay, next. We have, of course, Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I am eyeing to sit down with a cozy fantasy, and I was under the impression that I am a person who craves sort of, like, conflict and action and energy and fighting and blood and roar, or like bad guys and like someone getting hurt and then taking care of them and just, you know, chaos in my books. I recently read a cozy Omegaverse called A Pack for Autumn. A Pack for Winter should be arriving today. I'm so excited. And it made me realize that if I am enjoying the genre, which was Omegaverse, it can be literally anything. The characters could go shopping the entire book. They could go to a cafe the entire book. They could do literally whatever they want. They could sit home and play video games the entire book. Like, I don't give a fuck. As long as I'm having a good time with the characters, as long as I enjoy the genre I'm reading, it can be cozy. It's changed my worldview of what I think I would enjoy reading. And I think this is the kind of cozy fantasy I could do. The other one we looked at, the one that was the Princess Bride and the people we meet on vacation, I don't think that's the kind of cozy fantasy I want to go for. I think this is the kind of cozy fantasy. And also the tea. So Legend and Lattes is already on my TBR. I'm not going to add it to this list. Can't Spell Tea Without Treason was on my radar, but not on my TBR. So now it's going on. all that to say, I think I would really like this, and I'm excited to add this sort of to my little, like, pocket of cozy books, because sometimes my anxiety does spike for no, like, apparent reason, but there are obviously things going on in the background, like my unconscious mind is working on things, and can you tell I'm in a lot of therapy? So, yeah, like, when I'm having really bad anxiety spikes, I think it will be really helpful and soothing for me to sit down with something that's cozy and low stakes, and we can just chill. Me and the characters can just vibe. I think that's the best plan of action. That brings me to my last book on this list. Somehow, the video with less books on the table, and I left out 4 of them, is the video I yapped the most in. Because the dark romance video was like 20 minutes, and this one's over 30 minutes. So make that make sense. That's crazy. I do kind of have more opinions, I guess, about fantasy, because that is the genre I started in, and then I went into romance later, much later. I grew up on fantasy. Fantasy's my bread and butter. Smooth like butter. Okay. I like fantasy a lot, so it kind of makes sense that this is a longer video. It's just silly for me to see how much longer when there's so many less books that we talked about. So we would be adding 3 books to my TBR, and books I would want to read out of this selection that we saw today and out of the books that I didn't know before going into this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If there are any sections or displays of the library of a bookstore you would like me to check out specifically, please let me know. Do keep in mind, I really only read romance and fantasy. So you can send me to other tables and I'm probably going to know 0 of those books, 0 of those authors, but it'll just be a long video because I'll be looking up everything. I'm probably going to continue doing this in different bookstores and bookshops, and they were, even as I was there, talking about redoing the displays, and I had been there 2 weeks ago, and the displays were different from 2 weeks ago, so I'm wondering how often they change these displays, because it's got to be pretty often. So I'll probably just keep checking back and seeing what they've added, what they've taken away, and I think this will be really fun for me to broaden my view of books and what is popular or what is being put in front of people who maybe aren't as plugged in to the bookish online communities as I am. So those are my closing thoughts. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this type of video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!